Today is Shiki Tohno's birthday, one of my favorite visual novel characters, and I wanted to celebrate it with an analysis. So, let us do an analysis on my favorite character, Shiki Tohno from... So, I'm not actually doing a Shiki Tohno character analysis, at least not yet. However, this is actually an analysis of the most infamous scene in Tsukihime, the chair scene. This is one of those scenes that is funny without context, but also very terrifying. One big thing about Tsukihime that I love is that Tsukihime delves more into the mentality of people, much more than Fates or any of the other Type Moon properties. I also like how Tsukihime is much more of a horror story than it is a action story. Of course, this mainly applies for the original, as the remake is much more action focused and doesn't really try to have those somber moments that the original had. So in this analysis, I aim to talk about three things. First off, the changes between the remake and the original, Shiki/Roa influence, as well as Shiki good boy mask. I mainly want to talk about all these things because as much as a meme of this scene is, it's a perfect representation of Shiki mindset half the time in Tsukihime. There are three changes with this scene. One is for the better, the other is up to interpretation for both the other two. For the good, the scene where Shiki is more mad about the fact that he can't hang out with his dear senpai is removed from the remake, thankfully. The other two reasons are the length of the scene as well as voice acting. These are what are up for interpretation. The length of the scene helps give that sense of you're going crazy along with Shiki. It's hard to know when exactly he's going to stop and where you're going to stop breathing. It's really great for how long it is. What makes it really good is that you don't know what you're doing for so long, and you just keep doing it, similar to Shiki. He just keep on doing it until he recognizes what he did. Same thing with you. When you recognize what he did, you're immediately stunned and bizarred by everything that just transpired. Now, the other thing being voice acting is really up for interpretation. For example, I personally like there being no voice acting for this particular scene more, as it's hard to exactly guess the expression on Hisui's face. It's also hard to guess how Shiki reacts after he's caught. Now, granted, the scene voice acting does go exactly how I had it in my head. Shiki response when he says, "Huh? What's the matter, Hisui?" is so casual that it is still just as disturbing as I thought it would be. But that's another thing with the voice acting. Because of the voice acting, you don't get that many interpretation of what exactly he responds with. Does he respond with calmness? Does he respond with anger? Does he respond with sadness? How exactly does he respond after doing this to this chair? And the answer is, well, he responded calmly, which is still just as great as the effect. But the fact alone of the mystery behind his expression from just reading it is lost because of the voice acting. With all that said, I think the remake does a great job with the scene. I also understand why they had to shorten it. Shortening the scene is understandable considering readers nowadays don't have as much of an attention span to sit through a wall of text like that. This could be said for a lot of Tsukihime remake, where they trimmed down the fat of a lot of scenes where it's just a lot of repeated dialogue, but it does lose some of the effect of Shiki's/other character manic attitudes, as well as their descent into insanity. Now to explain Shiki Tohno and Roa's role in all this. Now you may be a bit confused. Hey, didn't you call Shiki Tohno earlier? Is there's two Shiki Tohnos? And the answer to that is yes. There's literally two Shiki Tohnos. The only difference between their names is that one has all capitals in their name, while the other has their name in normal sense. This is something much easier to control in writing form as well as Japanese, as they have the syllables for, well, having this type of name sense. But considering I only speak English as of right now, the best thing I can do now is make a simpler way for us to understand who is who. So let's make some ground rules, because this will be something I will have to say in almost every episode I make for Shiki, Nanya, and Tohno. When I say Shiki or Shiki Tohno, I'm referring to the main protagonist, Shiki Tohno. When I'm referring to Nanya, I'm referring to Shiki Nanya. And when I'm referring to Shiki Tohno, I will use the word Tohno instead of Shiki Tohno. Alright, are we good now? Good. One way to interpret this scene is that Shiki isn't in control of his actions. Instead, it's actually the actions of Tohno/Rora, who are inside of Shiki's body, controlling it from the inside sometimes. How much of the words are Shiki's and how much of the words are Tohno/Rora? This is something that is never clarified, and it works to a wonderful effect. Because on one hand, it shows how deep-seated these two are entwined with Shiki's soul at this point. On the other hand, it shows how crazy already Shiki is, how mentally unstable he is, that a slight suggestion from Rora/Tohno manages to make him have a breakdown and break a chair because he happened to run into it. Some words can easily be viewed as Tohno's words or Rora's words. For example, his insult against the maids being lazy and not doing their job properly. This is something we know Shiki wouldn't normally say. He wouldn't say it to their face either. That also being said, this happening in a route where Shiki's mentality is slowly draining. His insanity is being drained by Rora and Tohno. So it's understandable if he can't keep this kindness up all the time. Finally, I want to talk about Shiki's good boy mask, as it shows his face really hard here. Shiki wears a mask normally. He's a good person, don't get me wrong, but sometimes he tries too hard to seem like a good person, as if to tell everyone that, hey, I'm a good person, so don't worry about me. That is the reason why he always put on this good boy mask. Deep inside, however, he's much different. He's much more chaotic. His mindset is constantly being destroyed. His own thoughts are rather conflicting and confusing. It's hard to say that he's a sane and normal person. However, he put on this mask for two reasons. One, to make the people around him not worry, but also for himself to believe that, one, he's a normal person, that he's a sane person. Here we see him actually use this mask on reflex, not because it was used for Hisui's sake, but his own sake. Though the remake in general has a more focus on Shiki's mask, trying to reveal it more and people calling him out on his certain, obsessions. For a huge example of this, and spoilers for a remake, the scene between Noelle and Shiki. When Noelle is dissecting the vampires she captured, she is basically torturing them till they die. Shiki responds with saying, hey, that's not right, you shouldn't be doing that. Noelle, the whole time, is getting off on killing and torturing these vampires, but she does eventually stop after she's practically finished. But once it's over, she calls out Shiki for who he is. and it really does bother him because he can't deny it. First, Noel calls him out on his sexuality for he has a murder boner, okay? Shiki gets off on killing. There's a lot of emphasis on this throughout the story. And I won't talk about it much here because that is more on his Nania side, but it's a really important part of his character. Her second thing that she calls out on Shiki is his good boy attitude. Mainly the fact that, hey, why are you trying to stop me from killing vampires? This is the same thing you do. Not to mention that vampires are inherently evil. So what exactly is the reason for keeping them alive? That they hold humanity still? Well, they're only going to hold humanity till they eventually bite someone. And they can't resist forever. Unlike the original timeline, you don't have any example of any vampires not losing their bloodlust. So, unlike Arcui, who has control in the main timeline, here she has so much less control over her bloodlust that Noel has a really good point. Noel's point is that Shiki isn't doing the right thing because he wants to do the right thing. He's doing the right thing that he believes is the right thing, not what he wants or know is the right thing, because he doesn't know what the right thing is. But I do also want to mention something about Shiki's mask. His good boy mask isn't technically a mask either. Shiki Tohno is a good person. The mask isn't completely fake. However, it's also not fair to say that everything he does is out of goodwill, because it isn't. Not everything he do is out of goodwill, but because, simply put, he has to do it because he believes the good person in him would do it. Shiki himself is actually quite selfless, but reckless at the same time. Example being his defense for Arcui when she has her bloodlust slip, CL comforting him, as well as Sasuke and Sion. All these examples shows him being a good person from the bottom of his heart, but also being selfish and not taking the proper responsibility. So why do I say all this talking about Shiki's good boy personality? Well, going back to the scene I'm actually talking about, the scene has Shiki react as casual as possible, and his casual reaction is the most terrifying thing about this scene. It's terrifying to see how Shiki doesn't even notice how weird he is being. The scariest part of this scene is how quickly and seamless he puts on this mask. If you didn't know who Shiki Tohno was, if you saw a normal person react this way, it would be the most terrifying thing ever. Hence why Hisui is so frightened when she leaves the room. She's frightened because it's not a normal thing. This is the one time he slipped up, showing his mask for as fake as it is. To me, this scene represents two main factors. One, the falsity of his mask, and two, the declining sanity that is going on within his mind. But thank you guys so much for watching. I made this video really last minute, but I really thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you come back for my next analysis. Thank you all for watching, and take care.